Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hopefully, you guys are having a great Wednesday. Got lots of NHL news to discuss, so make sure that you stay tuned into this episode until the end. Like I said, on Monday's episode of the Hockey Talk TG podcast, I'll be discussing Mondays and Tuesdays games of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. On Wednesday's episodes of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, and then on Friday's episodes of the Hockey Talk TG podcast, I'll discuss the Wednesday and Thursday's games of the Stanley Cup Playoffs on those episodes. The reason why is because you listen to my podcast overall, you would know I put my episodes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I don't go on Tuesdays and Thursdays to talk about Mondays and Wednesday's games. So that's why that from now on, throughout the Stanley Cup Playoffs, I'm going to be talking about Mondays and Tuesdays games on Wednesday's episodes of the Hockey Talk TG podcast, and then on Friday's episodes of the Hockey Talk TG podcast, I'll talk about Wednesdays and Thursdays games, and then for Monday's episodes of the Hockey Talk TG podcast, I'll just talk about games that happened over the weekend. So that's just to remind you guys again, in case you didn't listen to Monday's episodes of the Hockey Talk TG podcast. So just a little reminder. Also, make sure to go follow the Hockey Talk TG podcast if you have not already on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So you want to make sure that you're staying up to date on the latest episodes of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, your number one podcast for all things hockey. So go follow it if you are not already. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started into the NHL news for today. So, as always, or should say throughout the Stanley Cup Playoffs, on Wednesday's episodes of the Hockey Talk TG podcast, we'll talk about Monday's games first, and then we'll talk about Tuesday's games. And we had a great set of games on Monday, starting with the Montreal Canadiens taking on the Washington Capitals in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. So Alex Ovechkin scored the overtime game-winning goal in the Capitals' 3-2 overtime win against the Canadiens. He scored 2 minutes and 26 seconds in overtime to win the game. He also had a goal in regulation and assisted on Anthony Beauvillier's goal for a 3-point night. So what can Alex Ovechkin do at this point? I mean, at age 39, he is still going strong. It is really impressive. And with the overtime game-winning goal, the Capitals lead this best-of-7 series 1-0. And like I said, this is the first time since 2010 that the Capitals and Montreal Canadiens will be playing each other in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. And fun fact, and this is actually kind of an ironic fun fact, I might add, Game 1 of the Canadiens and Capitals 2010 playoff matchup went into overtime, and it was also in Washington, D.C. And the game ended by a final score of 3-2 in overtime in Game 1 of the 2010 Stanley Cup Playoffs between the Canadiens and Capitals in Washington, D.C. The Montreal Canadiens won that game 3-2 in overtime. And Tomas Plekanen scored the overtime game-winning goal in Game 1 for the Montreal Canadiens. So I actually found that a little bit odd and, kind of surprising. Like I said, it's kind of ironic when you think about it, because Game 1, 2010 Stanley Cup Playoffs between the Canadiens and Capitals in Washington, D.C. Game 1 of the 2025 Stanley Cup Playoffs between the Canadiens and Capitals in Washington, D.C. The game ends in a 3-2 overtime win. Canadiens won 3-2 in overtime in Game 1 in the 2010 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Capitals win 3-2 in overtime in the 2025 Stanley Cup Playoffs. So it's kind of ironic when you think about it. And also a fun fact, and this one I kind of found very surprising and shocking. This was Alex Ovechkin's first career overtime playoff goal. I found this a little bit shocking because he played 20 seasons in the NHL. 16 of those seasons he's been in the Stanley Cup Playoffs, and he has 72 career playoff goals going into that game. You would think at least some of those goals would have been overtime game winners. Instead, they weren't. So this is his first career playoff overtime goal, and like I said, I was shocked at this, and I'm pretty sure the majority of you guys were. I'm pretty sure all of us was kind of shocked at this stat, by the way, because like I said, you would think Alex Ovechkin, the grade A, will have more career playoff overtime goals than just this one. So, but he got his first career playoff overtime goal, and Capitals lead this best of 7 series 1-0. That's all that matters. And Washington had a lot of physicality going into this game with 42 hits, with Alex Ovechkin leading the team with 7 hits. He also had a hit on Cole Caulfield. He has one of my favorite players to watch in the NHL. And this was an interview that Cole Caulfield had with ESPN's reporter Emily Kaplan. And she asked him, what was it like taking a hit from Alex Ovechkin? And Cole Caulfield joked about it. He joked about an interview. He had a little joke in the interview, and he said that he didn't recommend it. So he just kind of joked around and said he didn't recommend anybody taking a hit from Alex Ovechkin. But hey, she did see Alex Ovechkin back in the day during his prime. He was known for his gritty and physicality. So I'm pretty sure Cole Caulfield knew that. But yeah, that's what he was known for in his prime. So it didn't surprise me that he led this team he led the team with 7 hits in this game, and he was all over the place in this game. And there are rumors talking about Alex Ovechkin. He might try and go for the all-time hits record. I mean, he already went for the all-time goals record. He surpassed Wayne Gretzky on the NHL's all-time goal scoring list, and there are rumors saying that he might try and go for the all-time hits record. So the grade A chase going for the all-time hits record right there. That's actually kind of impressive. I mean, he has 3,743 hits in his career. He's third on the NHL's all-time hits list. Matt Martin is second on the list with 3,936 hits, and Cal Clutterbuck, who is now retired, is the all-time hits leader with 4,029. And Dylan Strome had all 3 assists in this game for the Washington Capitals. Logan Thompson, he made 33 saves for the Capitals in this game. This was his first game back since April the 2nd, in the Capitals' 5-1 loss to the Hurricanes, and he sustained a upper body injury in the first period in that game. And the Canadians, they did rally in the third period to come back in this game on goals from Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki, both assisted by Lane Hudson to tie the game up at 2, sending this game to overtime, but they could not get it done. Sam Montembeault made 29 saves for the Canadians in his playoff debut. And Game 2 of this Best of 7 series is today at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. This will air on ESPN for you to watch. But moving on to Game 2 of the Winnipeg Jets and St. Louis Blues, Kyle Connor came up clutch once again, scoring the game-winning goal for the Winnipeg Jets, for the Jets to take the 2-1 win in Game 2 and lead this Best of 7 series 2-0. And what a pass from Cole Perfetti to set up Kyle Connor near the right side of the net, near the goal line, to set Kyle Connor up for the game-winning goal. And this is what Kyle Connor said on the win, and I quote, "We talked about our mentality going into tonight. You saw it was a tight checking game, run around, not a ton of space, and not a ton of odd-man rushes. They weren't going to be beat that way. We weren't going to be beat that way. Just came down to who wanted it more." And I agree with that last part that he said. It came down to who wanted it more. This game had a lot of physicality going into it. A lot of physicality. We saw some of that same physicality in Game 1. So it's been a rough It's been a rough first 2 games in this series. A lot of physicality in this series. A lot of scrums and fights so far in the series between the Jets and Blues. So Game 3 in St. Louis should be somewhat interesting. Mark Scheifele, he had a goal and an assist in this game for a 2-point night, and Connor Hellebuyck made 21 saves in the win. He made 14 saves in Game 1, so obviously a huge performance in this one for Connor Hellebuyck than was in Game 1. But for the St. Louis Blues, Jimmy Snuggerud scored his first career playoff goal on the power play with 2 seconds remaining in the first period to tie the game up at 1, and that was basically it for St. Louis. Jordan Binnington made 20 saves in the loss, and Game 3 of this best-of-7 series will be in St. Louis tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. I believe it will be on. This will probably be on TBS or ESPN. This note I did not write down, so that's my fault right there. But I believe it will be on TBS this time instead of ESPN and TNT. But this is what Braden Shen said on the loss. He said, "Hellebuck made some saves tonight. We could just do a little bit better job at getting traffic and pucks and people to the net for some second opportunities." And Blues head coach Jim Montgomery also talked about the loss. He said this, and I quote, "I think as a group we're not happy to be down 2-0, but the games are really close. There's not much separation going on right now. We need to make a separation. We need to find another level when we can go home so we can end up on top by a goal. We're going home. We're going to be in front of our frenzy crowd, and we're going to have an opportunity to hold serve at home. We got to get Game 3. And understandably so, I agree with that. Quote, we got to win Game 3. You're going to be at home in front of your home fans. As a Blackhawks fan, I'm happy to see that the Jets are now up 2-0 in this series against the St. Louis Blues. If you've been listening to the Hockey Talk TG podcast before, and if you watch my videos on TG Hockey Channel, you will know that I am a Blackhawks fan. I said this on the podcast before if you've been listening. So as a Blackhawks fan, I am happy to see that the Blues are up. The Jets are up 2-0 over the St. Louis Blues, and I actually picked the Jets to win this series against the Blues. So another reason why I'm actually feeling kind of happy that the Jets are up 2-0 in the series against St. Louis Blues. But Blues, I expect them to come out to a good start, I should say, for Game 3. And here's what St. Louis needs to do to win Game 3 and get back in this series. So one thing that we need to see increased offensive pressure. They need to generate more high-quality scoring chances against the Jets in Game 3, which is probably going to be impossible to do considering the Jets are President's Trophy winners. They're a high-powered offensive team, but I'm pretty sure the St. Louis Blues, they've been great all season. They had a great second half of the season, I should say, ever since the Four Nations. So I'm pretty sure with the home crowd behind them, they'll be bringing it, and they will possibly come out with the win in Game 3. But we need to see more high-quality scoring chances for St. Louis. I felt like in this Game 2, we didn't see much of that. They looked kind of slow in Game 2. Game 3, they need to come out with a great start and get on the board early, because I think in Games 1 and Game 2, they fell down early 1-0. They did claw back to still stay in the game, but we need to see them get off to the great start, get the first goal of the game, and then go from there. And then number 2, we need to see a lot of more physicality. So both Games 1 and Game 2, we did see physicality from both of these teams, but for the St. Louis Blues in general, we need to see that physicality in Game 3 in front of their home fans, and we need to see them create turnovers in this game. Like, we need to see, or should say, capitalize off of turnovers in Game 3. And then last thing they need to do, they need to stay out of the box. Stay out of the box. I think the Jets power play, I believe, was one of the top power plays in the league in the 2024-25 season. So their special teams have been really good. Staying out of the box will be key to winning the game in Game 3. And also, they need to stay on Jets players like Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele. We saw what they did in Games 1 and Game 2. Those are going to be the top players for the Winnipeg Jets, and the Blues need to contain those two players. So those are my thoughts on what the Blues need to do to win Game 3. What are you guys' thoughts on this? What do you think the Blues need to do to win Game 3? Especially if you're a Blues fan that's watching or listening to the podcast. What do you think needs to be done for St. Louis to win Game 3? There's still time. Jordan Binnington, excellent goaltender. Jordan Kyrou, great player. I had them both on my fantasy hockey team this season. They put up great performances for my fantasy hockey team to come out with some of the wins, though. So I mean, there's still time. I mean, hope is not lost yet. As a Blackhawks fan, I still believe that there's hope for the St. Louis Blues to come back in this series. So we'll see what happens in Game 3. But moving on to two other Central Division teams that were going at it on Monday, the Colorado Avalanche and Dallas Stars, Game 2. So Dallas Stars, they evened up the series 1 game apiece with the Colorado Avalanche as Colin Blackwell, former Chicago Blackhawk, scored the overtime game-winning goal in the Stars' 4-3 win over the Avalanche on Monday. He scored with 2 minutes and 14 seconds left to go into overtime. On the rebound for the win. He was a healthy scratch in Game 1. He comes up clutch in Game 2. And we got a 1-1 series. And fun fact, Colin Blackwell is the second player in Dallas Stars, Minnesota North Stars franchise history to score an overtime goal during his first playoff game with the team since Brian Propp did it in Game 1 of the 1991 Division Semifinals. So I thought that was a fun fact to mention on the podcast. And Tyler Seguin, he scored a power play goal in this game with 53 seconds left to go in the first period. This was his first goal since November 29th against the same Colorado Avalanche team, and Dallas Stars 5-3 win at home against the Avs. He missed 58 games due to hip surgery. He did come back in the final game of the Stars regular season against the Nashville Predators, which was a 5-1 loss for Dallas in that one. Tomas Harley and Evgeny Dadonov also scored for Dallas. Harley scored his second career playoff goal. He could possibly step up for the Stars' blue line for Miro Heiskanen. Of course, Miro Heiskanen has been out with an injury. He was pivotal on both ends of the ice in this game, though, so I really like Tomas Harley's game. Hope to see more of that from Game 3 and throughout this series as well, because the Stars' defense is kind of weak. Since Miro Heiskanen is still out with an injury, so Tomas Harley is going to have to be that unsung hero for the Stars D. And then getting Dadonov, he had the game-tying goal, tying the game up at 3 in the third period, scoring on the rebound to send this game into overtime. And Jake Ottinger, he made 34 saves for Dallas, bouncing back from a Game 1 loss and keeping Dallas in this game and throughout the series. And for the Colorado Avalanche, Nathan MacKinnon scored his third goal of the series on the power play. Jack Drury, Logan O'Connor also scored in this game for Dallas. Mackenzie Blackwood made 35 saves in the loss. And the one thing for the Colorado Avalanche was the turnovers for them and the mismanagement of the puck. And head coach Jared Bednar spoke about that. He said this, and I quote, "I think they came out with a lot of desperation in the third period. We kind of stopped skating out of our zone and making plays out of our zone. We were throwing it right back to them too much in the neutral zone. There's times when you got to go up and out and make the safe play, but we mismanaged the puck a little bit in the third period there, more than a little bit. We had some turnovers that we forced because of their forecheck, and then we had some other ones that weren't. They all started to add up, and you start playing on your half of the rink too much, and bad things are going to happen." And Game 3 of this best-of-7 series is Wednesday today in Denver at 8:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. And just to quote what Cale Makar said, it is going to be a long, tough series. So I expect this series to go to 7 games. That's what I said in my playoff predictions video on the TG Hockey Channel. If you missed it, I also put it out on the Hockey Talk TG podcast, so you can check that out there too. You can go there or the TG Hockey Channel to check out the video. But I did say the Avalanche were going to win this one in 7. But going to the West Coast now, going to Hollywood, as the Oilers and Kings had a wild game in LA. And in a 6-5 win for the LA Kings, Philip Deneau, former Chicago Blackhawk, or should say Chicago Blackhawks draft pick, 'cause I don't think he played a game with the Blackhawks, but he was drafted by them. But he scored the game-winning goal with 41 seconds remaining in the third period to give the Kings a 6-5 win over the Edmonton Oilers. And this was Philip Deneau's second goal of the game. and LA leads the series 1-0. And they continue to be good on home ice this season in the playoffs. They were 31-6-4 on home ice in the regular season, but if you count that and the Stanley Cup playoffs, they are now 32-6-4 on home ice. So they probably have the best home record, I believe, in the NHL. And it's the fourth straight playoff matchup between the two teams. Obviously, the Oilers won the last three playoff series in 2024, 2023, and 2022. Biggest storyline heading into this was the playoff debut of Oilers forward and veteran Jeff Skinner. Obviously, he played 1,078 regular season games with the Hurricanes, Sabres, and Oilers. This is his 15th NHL season, and this is only his first career Stanley Cup playoff game. So he's been on some bad teams during his career. The Buffalo Sabres obviously having a long year playoff drought, and the Hurricanes at the time when he was on there, they weren't in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But take a look at Jeff Skinner's stats from his first career Stanley Cup playoff game. He had an assist, and he logged in 11 minutes and 12 seconds of ice time. And fun fact about this, that like I said, Jeff Skinner did play in 1,078 regular season games. This was the most in NHL history prior to appearing in a playoff game. And he's actually 1 point away from 700 career NHL points. He has 699 points in 1,078 games, 373 goals, 326 assists for 699 points in 1,078 career regular season games. LA got off to a great start in this game. They had a 4-0 lead late in the second period with goals from Andrei Kuzmenko, Quinton Byfield, Adrian Kempe, and Philip Deneau. Kuzmenko's and Byfield's goal came in the first period. Andrei Kuzmenko got his first career Stanley Cup playoff goal, scoring on the power play. Of course, he was traded. He played for the Flames at the start of the season, and then he was traded to Philadelphia, and then the Flyers traded him to the Kings. So he's been on three different teams during this 2024-25 season. And Andrei Kuzmenko, Adrian Kempe each had a goal and 2 assists for a 3-point night. And Quinton Byfield, Kevin Fiala had a goal and an assist for a 2-point night. But Edmonton, they came back in this game. They actually tied the game up at 5 with a minute 28 remaining in regulation, with goals from Leon Draisaitl, Matthias Janmark, Corey Perry, Zach Hyman, and Connor McDavid. So the big guys came to play for this one. The Stars were out in LA, literally. And Connor McDavid, he had a goal and 3 assists for a 4-point night in this one. And the goaltending was, despite this being a high-scoring game, the goaltending was actually kind of solid. Darcy Kuemper making 20 saves for the LA Kings, and Stuart Skinner making 24 saves for the Edmonton Oilers. In Game 2 of this best-of-7 series is Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central Time on TBS and HBO Max. Before we get into Tuesday's games, just got to breaking news from Seattle on Mondays. The Kraken fired their head coach, Dan Blysma. No replacement was named. So the Kraken obviously making moves right there. And not just that, but also the general manager, Ron Francis, is now the team president. And assistant general manager, Jason Botterill, hopefully I pronounced that last name right, I probably didn't, will be promoted to general manager. And this was Dan Blysma's first season behind the Kraken bench. He replaced Dave Hackstall on May 28th of 2024. And in his first season with Seattle, the Kraken finished the 2024-25 season campaign with a 35-41-6 record, 20 points out of a playoff spot right there for Seattle. And they missed the playoffs for the third time in 4 seasons. But before joining the Kraken, Dan Blysma coached the Kraken's AHL affiliate, the Coachella Valley Firebirds, leading them to consecutive Calder Cup finals. And Dan Blysma, of course, you Penguins fans should all know that he coached the Penguins, and he led them to the 2009 Stanley Cup Finals, and of course they won Stanley Cup that year. And he had an NHL coaching record of 355, 231, and 61 record in 647 games with the Kraken, Sabres, and Penguins. And this is what Ron Francis said on the firing of Dan Blysma. He said, Dan is a great person and respected coach. He played an important role in the development of many of our young prospects and was a big part of our early success in Coachella Valley. We sincerely wish him and his family nothing but success moving forward. And assistant coach Jessica Campbell, who is the first woman to hold a full-time assistant coaching position in the NHL. We don't know what the future is going to look like for her. Hopefully she continues coaching for Seattle, but obviously the Kraken are making moves. They're another team that's in the coaching cars, and they're making moves to their front office. They probably might even make some big moves coming up in the offseason, but we'll just have to see what the future will hold for Seattle. But moving on to Tuesday's game. So, starting with the Hurricanes and Devils game 2, the Hurricanes scored 3 unanswered goals to win 3-1 against the New Jersey Devils on Tuesday. The Hurricanes lead this best-of-7 series 2-0. And the Devils, they had a 1-0 lead on a goal from Jesper Bratt, 3 minutes and 51 seconds in the first period. He scored on the rebound at the top of the crease, and that was basically it. So, scoring the first goal of the game, then he gave up 3 unanswered, and it's a 3-1 win for Carolina. Joey Martinook, he had a shorthanded goal, and he also had an assist for a 2-point night. 13 points in 7 career playoff games against the Devils. 4 goals, 9 assists for 13 points in 7 playoff games against the Devils. So when it comes to playing New Jersey, he certainly has no problem. He's going to rack up points every single night. But his shorthanded goal turned out to be the game winner, which gave the Hurricanes a 2-1 lead in the second period. He almost scored 6 minutes in the second period to give the Hurricanes a 2-1 lead. And Shane Gostisbehere had the game-tying goal for Carolina, also coming in the second period. And Seth Jarvis sealed the deal with an empty netter with 36 seconds remaining in the third to give the Hurricanes a 3-1 lead. And Freddie Anderson made 25 saves in the win for Carolina. Jacob Markstrom made 25 saves for New Jersey in the loss. And the Devils, they were without the Frenchmen Luke Hughes and Brendan Dillon due to undisclosed injuries sustained in Game 1. So the injury issues continue to pile on for New Jersey. And to be honest, I can easily see this being a clean sweep. I don't know if I said that in my predictions video, but based on what I saw from Game 1 and Game 2, I can easily see this being a clean sweep for New Jersey. But if it doesn't, it'll have to be Jacob Markstrom. Obviously not making this a clean sweep, but if the Devils don't tighten up in Game 3, which Game 3 they will be at home in front of their home fans on Friday at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That game will air on TBS and HBO Max. But if they don't tighten up, clean sweep, just like that. But we'll just have to see what happens in Game 3. But moving on to the Battle of Ontario now, as Max Domi, the hometown kid, he scored the overtime game-winning goal in the Maple Leafs 3-2 overtime win over the Ottawa Senators. He scored 3 minutes and 9 seconds into overtime, and Toronto leads this best-of-7 series 2-0. And he had his dad, Ty Domi, in the crowd watching his son score the overtime game-winning goal. Of course, if you don't know, Max Domi's dad, Ty Domi, did play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I'm pretty sure he had to feel happy, excited that his son got the overtime game-winning goal. And fun fact, this is the first time since 2002 that Toronto has led a playoff series 2-0, and they went all the way to the conference finals that year and lost to the Hurricanes in 6 games. And just like in Game 1, the Maple Leafs would get off to a good start, scoring early. They took a 2-0 lead with goals coming from Morgan Riley and John Tavares, both of them in the first period. And Anthony Stolarz made 26 saves for the Leafs. And taking a look at his first 2 career playoff starts, not bad. Actually, good stats, I should say. Great stats, I should say. He's 2-0 with 1.95 goals against average and a .934 save percentage. Only 4 goals scored against in this series so far. Of course, Toronto outscored Ottawa 9-4 in the first 2 games. They won 6-2 in Game 1 and 3-2 in overtime in Game 2. And for the Ottawa Senators, Brady Tkachuk and Artem Gaudette scored for them. Of course, Brady Tkachuk gets his first career Stanley Cup playoff goal. Elitist Omark made 18 saves for the Senators, and Game 3 will be in Ottawa Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. This will air on ESPN2. And this is just some notes that the Senators need to do to win Game 3 or come back in the series. They need to get on the board early. That's one thing. In Games 1 and 2, we didn't see that. I mean, they actually fell 2-0 twice in Games 1 and Game 2. But just to quote what PK Subban said yesterday during the third intermission when this game went to overtime, the Senators looked very poised, and they didn't back down in this game. They actually came back in this game. But PK Subban did say they were poised in this game, and they were staying composed, and they found a way to force overtime. We need to see that same play in Game 3. And number 2, we need to see more from their special teams. I mean, they got a power play goal in Game 2, but their power play hasn't really been clicking overall throughout this series, and we keep seeing the Senators go off to the penalty box. They need to stay out of the penalty box. I mean, in Game 1, head coach Travis Green did scratch Nick Cousins and brought in Matthew Highmore because he was good at carrying off penalties and played a shutdown role right there. Obviously, not seeing that in these first 2 games. So staying out of the box will be key for the Senators in Games 3. We don't need to see them take costly, stupid penalties in Games 3 in front of their home crowd. So staying out of the box will be key. And then another thing, we need to see more shots on net for the Ottawa Senators, and we need to see them create turnovers some more. We're not seeing that in Games 1 and Game 2. They need to bring the energy in Game 3 in front of their hometown fans. So those are just my thoughts on what they need to do to win Game 3. Let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments below. But moving on from the Battle of Ontario to the Battle of Florida. Same thing that happened in Game 1 to the Ottawa Senators. The Tampa Bay Lightning get beaten 6-2 by their arch and division rivals, the Florida Panthers. Matthew Tkachuk played a big factor in the Panthers' 6-2 win over the Tampa Bay Lightning, as he had 2 goals and assists for a 3.9. Of course, both his goals coming on the power play. He missed the final 25 regular season games due to a lower body injury he sustained at the Four Nations, but he's back in the lineup now, and we finally get that Brad Marchand, Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, rat gritty line. Actually, I don't know if that was the line going into that game, but if it's not, I didn't look at the lineups before the game started, to be honest. But if that wasn't the lineup heading into this game, that needs to be the lineup, considering that Brad Marchand, Matthew Tkachuk, and Sam Bennett are all on the same team now. And the Panthers' power play also was a big factor in this game, as they capitalized on 3 of their power play opportunities, with Matthew Tkachuk scoring twice on the power play, Nate Schmidt scoring a power play goal in this game. He also had a even strength goal, so he had 2 goals in this game, and Sam Reinhart and Sam Bennett each recorded a goal and assist for a 2-point night. Sergei Bobrovsky made 20 saves in the win for Florida, and for the Tampa Bay Lightning, Jay Gensel, Braden Points scored for Tampa in the loss, while Andre Vasilevsky made 10 saves. Game 2 is Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Central Time on TBS, True TV, and HBO Max. So we'll see if the Lightning can even up the series 1 game apiece heading into Game 2. But obviously, like I said before, this series could go either way. So we don't know who's going to win this series. It could be the Florida Panthers win the series, or it could be the Tampa Bay Lightning. 50% have the Panthers, including myself, winning the series, and the other 50% had the Tampa Bay Lightning winning the series. But we'll just have to see what happens going forward. But moving on to the final game of the Tuesday slate between the Minnesota Wild and Vegas Golden Knights. This was a late night game. I did not watch this game because obviously school next day. But the Minnesota Wild came out with a 5-2 win over the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 2. And so this series is tied at 1 apiece heading to Minnesota on Thursday. And this is Minnesota's first win over Vegas this season, if you count the regular season and the playoffs. Vegas swept this regular season series meetings with the Minnesota Wild, and they also took Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. So the Wild get their first win of the season over the Golden Knights, and Kirill Kaprizov had a stellar performance, leading the Wild with 2 goals and assists for a 3-point night. Can we just talk about that salsa pass, though, from Kirill? I mean, sets it on the tape for Matt Boldy. Matt Boldy comes in on a breakaway and scores on Adin Hill. But what about the salsa pass from Kirill Kaprizov? I actually did see this on SportsCenter and on TikTok when they posted it. I didn't watch the game live, but I actually saw them talking about it on SportsCenter, and that was a great salsa pass from Kirill the Thrill. Just finds Matt Boldy on the tape. Matt Boldy comes in on a breakaway, goes through the Vegas D, and scores past Adin Hill. That was probably the pass of the playoffs, I should say. Pass of the playoffs. I mean, what a pass that was. I can't stop thinking about that salsa pass, to be honest with you guys. But yeah, Matt Boldy gets his 3rd goal in 2 games. He also had assists for a 2-point night, and it was basically the Wild capitalizing on Vegas turnovers in this game, scoring 3 goals in the first period, and then they had a 4-0 lead early in the second period. Marcus Foligno and Matt Zuccarello, the veterans, also scored for Vegas. I mean, not Vegas, Minnesota in the win, while Philip Gustafsson made 30 saves for the Wild. And for the Vegas Golden Knights, Noah Hanifin and Tomas Hertl scored for Vegas. Vegas tried to complete a comeback in this one, but it wasn't enough as Kirill Kaprizov iced the game away when he empty netter. But obviously the huge takeaway from the Golden Knights loss was basically turnovers, especially from defenseman Shea Theodore. I think he turned the puck over like two, 3 times in this game. According to notes I looked up, because like I said, I didn't watch this game. I just had to get the notes and watch the highlights when it happened, but I didn't watch the game live. Adin Hill, he made 12 saves for Vegas in the loss, and like I said, Game 3 will be in Minnesota on Thursday at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time on TBS, True TV, and HBO Max. Alright, Stanley Cup playoff games on the slate for today. So there's only 3 games on the slate. We got Game 2 of the Montreal Canadiens and Washington Capitals at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. This will air on ESPN. The Capitals lead this best-of-7 series 1-0. We'll see if the Canadiens can even up the series at 1 game apiece. And then we got Game 3 of the Dallas Stars and Colorado Avalanche at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. This will also air on ESPN. And this series is tied up at 1. Dallas Stars with a 4-3 overtime win in Game 2 to even up the series 1 game apiece. We could see Gabriel Landeskog play for Game 3 for the Colorado Avalanche. He was activated off of injured reserve before Game 2 of the Stars and Avalanche matchup, so he was activated off of IR. He did practice with the team, but he did not play Game 2. We could see him play Game 3 in Denver in front of the home fans. And then, just to wrap up the night, we got Game 2 of the Edmonton Oilers and LA Kings at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. This will air on TBS and HBO Max. The Kings lead this best-of-7 series 1-0. Can we see more fireworks in this game like we did in Game 1, where it was a wild one? Kings won 6-5. Can we see some of that in Game 2? We'll just have to see. But before we wrap up the podcast, New York Islanders releasing a statement that Lou Lamoriello will not return as their president and general manager. The team announced this on Tuesday. Of course, Lou Lamoriello spent 7 seasons as the president and general manager of the Islanders. He was hired on May 22nd of 2018, and the Islanders, during his tenure, they qualified for the playoffs 5 times. And they reached the Eastern Conference Finals in 2020 and 2021, and that's basically it. And then in the 2024-25 season, the Islanders finished with a 35-12 record, missing the playoffs and ranking 31st in both power play and penalty kill percentages at 72.2%. And they finished 6th in the Metropolitan Division, 9 points out of a playoff spot. They eliminated from playoff contention after a 4-3 shootout loss to the Philadelphia Flyers on April the 12th. So we'll just have to see where do the Islanders go from here after missing the playoffs and after announcing that Lou Lamoriello will not come back as their GM and Team Preston. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Really do appreciate it. Like I said, make sure that you're following Hockey Talk TV podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are not already. We are with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So you want to make sure that you're staying up to date on the latest episode of the Hockey Talk TV podcast. But nonetheless, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. God first as always. Be blessed. I'll see you guys Friday for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Take care.